The billionaire mother thought her daughter was alone inside the empty office, but when she pushed open the door, she stopped so suddenly that her assistant nearly walked into her. 12-year-old Brielle Sterling was asleep on a worn leather couch, her head resting against the shoulder of the building's janitor, while the man carefully held an ice pack against her bruised ankle. A half-eaten sandwich sat on the table beside them, along with a child's water bottle and a small handwritten note reminding her to take slow breaths. The janitor looked up calmly, but Brielle woke and immediately reached for his hand. That was the moment her mother realized something terrifying. Her daughter trusted a man she barely knew more than almost anyone in her carefully controlled world. What the billionaire did not know was that the quiet janitor was not an ordinary maintenance worker. He was a single father and a former Navy SEAL who had spent years protecting people in places where one mistake could cost a life. If you believe kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances can change someone's life, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so our family can continue sharing emotional stories that remind us never to judge a person by appearances. Margot Bellamy had built her fortune by turning a small technology company into a global empire, but the one thing she could not control was the pain inside her daughter. Brielle had been a bright, energetic child until a family tragedy changed everything. Her father died unexpectedly when she was 8, and Margot responded by becoming fiercely protective. She hired private tutors, personal assistants, security guards, therapists, and specialists. She redesigned their home so that almost every possible danger could be eliminated. Brielle had everything money could provide, but she slowly began feeling as though she had no room to breathe. The girl became anxious around crowds and uncomfortable when adults argued. She hated disappointing people and often apologized when she had done nothing wrong. When she fell, Margot immediately called for a doctor. When she struggled at school, Margot hired another tutor. When Brielle said she wanted to walk to the park alone, security personnel quietly followed her. Margot believed she was protecting her daughter from the world, but Brielle began to believe that the world was something she needed protection from. At the center of Margot's company stood a 30-story glass tower filled with executives, designers, engineers, lawyers, and hundreds of employees. Near the bottom of that hierarchy worked a quiet janitor named Graham Mercer. Graham was 40 years old, divorced, and raising his 10-year-old son, Wesley, by himself. He had worked at the building for almost 2 years and was known for being reliable, respectful, and unusually observant. He never complained about difficult shifts. He never sought attention. He simply did his work and went home to his son. Nobody knew that Graham had once served as a Navy SEAL. His military career had been extraordinary but painful. He had spent years in demanding operations, where discipline and calm were necessary for survival. He had lost friends and carried memories he rarely discussed. After leaving the military, he struggled with civilian life. The noise of ordinary society sometimes felt more overwhelming than anything he had experienced overseas. He eventually realized that what he wanted most was a simple life where he could raise Wesley and be present for him. The janitorial job gave him that stability. One afternoon, Brielle wandered into an employee lounge because she was waiting for her mother to finish a meeting. She had forgotten her tablet and was sitting alone with a book when a heavy cart rolled unexpectedly across the hallway. The noise startled her so badly that she dropped the book and froze. Graham was nearby. He immediately noticed her breathing becoming rapid. He did not rush toward her. He lowered the volume on the cleaning machine, moved the cart away, and gave her space. Then he quietly showed her how to focus on 5 things she could see, 4 things she could touch, and 3 things she could hear. It was a grounding technique he had learned during his years of training and later adapted for Wesley when his son became anxious about medical procedures. Brielle eventually calmed down. Graham did not ask for thanks. He simply picked up her book and placed it beside her. That small act began a friendship. Over the next several weeks, Brielle often found Graham around the building. Sometimes he was cleaning windows. Sometimes he was repairing a door. Sometimes he was carrying supplies. He always remembered her name. He never treated her like a billionaire's daughter. He treated her like a child. If she wanted help, he helped. If she wanted to try something herself, he waited. If she became nervous, he never told her she was being silly. He simply stayed nearby until she felt safe again. Brielle began telling Graham things she rarely told her mother. She admitted that she was afraid of disappointing Margot. She admitted that she sometimes pretended to feel okay because she did not want another therapist. She even confessed that she hated the enormous house because every room reminded her that her father was gone. Graham understood grief. He had lost people too. He never told her that everything would magically become better. Instead, he taught her that grief could exist beside happiness. A person could miss someone and still laugh. A person could be afraid and still move forward. Brielle started changing. She began walking through the building with more confidence. She started participating in school activities again. She even asked Graham if he could teach her how to fix a bicycle chain. Margot noticed the change but did not understand it. She assumed one of the specialists had finally succeeded. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. Brielle had been practicing for a school athletic event when she twisted her ankle. Her teacher called Margot, but Margot was trapped in an important business meeting. Security staff were several floors away. Graham happened to be nearby. He helped Brielle sit down, brought her water, checked that the injury did not appear severe, and called the school nurse. He then stayed with her until she stopped crying. When Margot finally arrived at the office, she walked into the empty lounge and saw her daughter asleep against Graham's shoulder. The sight immediately triggered suspicion. Margot's first instinct was anger. She demanded to know why a janitor was alone with her daughter. Graham stood carefully, making sure not to disturb Brielle's injured ankle. He explained exactly what had happened. He had not touched her except when helping her sit down. He had called the nurse. He had stayed because Brielle had been frightened. Margot looked at her daughter. Brielle opened her eyes and reached for Graham. That hurt Margot more than she expected. She realized her daughter was not afraid of him. She was afraid of losing him. Margot ordered a complete investigation into Graham. The following morning, the report arrived. She learned that Graham was not simply a janitor. He was a former Navy SEAL who had served for more than a decade. His military record contained commendations, specialized training, and several assignments that were not publicly described. He had left the service after a difficult operation in which several members of his team were killed. Margot was stunned. She could not understand why someone with that background was cleaning floors in her company. Then she discovered the rest. Graham had a son, Wesley, who had significant medical expenses. Graham had turned down higher-paying jobs because they required extensive travel. He wanted to be present for his child. Margot felt ashamed of the assumptions she had made. But she was still angry that Graham had never told her about his military background. She confronted him. Graham explained that he did not mention his past because he did not want special treatment. He had spent years being defined by his uniform, his service, and the things he had survived. When he became a father, he wanted to be known simply as Wesley's dad. That answer stayed with Margot. She began watching Graham more carefully. She saw him helping elderly employees carry boxes. She saw him fixing broken toys that children left behind. She saw him quietly giving his lunch to a delivery worker who had forgotten his own meal. She watched him speak to people who were ignored by executives. He treated everyone with the same dignity. Then Margot discovered something that changed her completely. Graham had never once told Brielle about his military achievements. He could have impressed her. He could have used his past to make himself seem important. Instead, he had deliberately kept it hidden. Brielle knew him only as the man who stayed when she was scared. Margot finally understood. Her daughter had not become attached to Graham because he was a Navy SEAL. She trusted him because he had never made her feel weak. That realization forced Margot to confront her own mistakes. She had spent years telling Brielle that she was protecting her. But perhaps she had been protecting herself from the possibility of losing another person she loved. Margot had confused control with love. She decided to change. She started giving Brielle more independence. She stopped answering questions on her daughter's behalf. She allowed her to make small mistakes. She encouraged her to walk into situations that made her nervous instead of immediately removing them. The change was difficult. Brielle was not suddenly fearless. But she became stronger. Graham continued helping her, but he never tried to replace her father. He encouraged her to build a relationship with her mother instead of pulling her away from her. That mattered deeply to Margot. One afternoon, Margot watched Brielle and Wesley playing basketball outside the company building while Graham repaired a loose fence nearby. Brielle missed a shot and became frustrated. Wesley laughed gently and encouraged her to try again. Brielle smiled. She tried again. This time she scored. Margot stood watching with tears in her eyes. Her daughter was not being protected from failure. She was learning how to survive it. Margot later offered Graham a senior position in the company's security and emergency preparedness division. Graham initially hesitated. He did not want to become another executive. Margot told him she was not offering the position because he was a former SEAL. She was offering it because she had seen his character. Graham accepted on one condition: he would use part of his salary to create a program helping veterans transition into civilian careers. Margot agreed. The program grew quickly. Former service members found work, training, and mentorship. Graham became a respected leader, but he remained humble. He still visited the maintenance staff. He still carried his own coffee. He still checked on Wesley's medical appointments himself. Brielle became involved in the program too. She started writing letters to children whose parents were deployed. She created small care packages and helped organize community events. She had once believed her fear made her weak. Now she understood that her experience could help someone else. Months later, Brielle stood on a small stage at one of the Foundation's events. Margot sat in the audience. Graham stood near the side with Wesley. Brielle spoke about courage. She did not describe military missions. She described ordinary courage. The courage to ask for help. The courage to admit when you are scared. The courage to make a mistake. The courage to forgive someone who loves you but does not always know how to show it. Margot cried. Graham lowered his head, overwhelmed. After the event, Brielle walked directly toward him and hugged him. Margot watched without jealousy. Instead, she smiled. She finally understood that children do not have a limited amount of love. A daughter could love her mother and still love someone who had helped her through difficult moments. Graham had not taken Margot's place. He had helped her find her way back to her daughter. Years later, Brielle would still remember the day her mother discovered her asleep beside the janitor. She would remember being embarrassed at first, then realizing that the moment had changed her family forever. Graham remained part of their lives. Wesley became like a brother to Brielle. Margot became less controlling and more present. And the woman who once believed she could solve every problem with money finally understood that some of life's most important gifts could not be purchased. They had to be earned through patience, through trust, through forgiveness, and through showing up. Before we reach the ending, leave a meaningful comment and tell us what you think was the most powerful lesson in this story. Was it Graham's quiet courage, Brielle's growing confidence, or Margot's decision to replace control with trust? Your words might inspire someone who is struggling to understand that asking for help is not weakness. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Because the billionaire mother had once believed the janitor was simply a man who cleaned her building. She was wrong. He was a father. He was a protector. He was a former Navy SEAL carrying wounds most people could never see. But most importantly, he was a good man who noticed a frightened child and chose to stay. And perhaps that was the greatest lesson of all. Heroes do not always wear uniforms. Sometimes they wear work clothes. Sometimes they carry cleaning supplies instead of medals. Sometimes they arrive quietly, without announcing who they are. And sometimes, the person who changes a child's life forever is simply the person who sits beside her when she is afraid and patiently reminds her that she does not have to face the world alone. Margot had spent years trying to give her daughter everything. Graham gave her something far more precious. He gave her daughter the courage to believe in herself. And that was something no billionaire could ever buy.